But for the millions of people that live in cities and have regular jobs, they're not going to own land, and they're not going to be turning that land into a business. I mean, for the average person, that's not advice that they can do anything
Well, so
with,
for the
is
average
it?
person, same advice I gave 2 years ago when I was on your show, which was getting some gold and silver are ways of owning monetary assets where you're not holding a dollar bill itself. And, when I came on a couple years ago, that would have been probably at about $500 an ounce, maybe 600.
And it's like 1,700, I think.
It's 1,450. Yeah, so
we have to talk about the gold thing, though, because gold, I think, especially in radio, has turned into one of the biggest scams. And
It's
I'm talking
unfortunate.
about the numismatic gold coins.
Yes, don't do that.
The Glenn Beck. So that's not what you're saying,
No,
right?
no,
Because
no,
we've
no.
done investigations on them, the techniques that are being used.
Oh, no.
You
Yeah.
need a 40% appreciation just to break even on some
Yeah,
of
no,
these
no, those
purchases.
are awful. I'm talking absolute, just plain vanilla bullion gold, which is like an American Eagle. It's minted by the U.S. Mint. Very easy to buy. You can buy it for just a little bit over the current spot price for gold. That's all I'm talking about. And
But again, that's not someone's entire. I mean, many people have 401ks and IRAs, and then they have matching programs with their employer. You can't just put it all into gold, right?
you can't. It depends on which program you have, and financial advisors can help people with this.
Though, I guess is the question.
Well, no, but everybody should have some.
Yeah.
Because here's the risk I'm trying to control for that. Listen, I have no joy in owning gold. Because I own gold is not a sign that I'm pessimistic about the future. It's a sign, though, I'm very pessimistic about the dollar itself. And so here's a question: if I told you have a 20% chance over the next 5 years, the house you're sleeping in will burn down.
Okay.
What would you do with that?
I'd make sure I have fire insurance.
Fire insurance, one, maybe sprinklers,
Yeah.
maybe alarms,
Sure.
something, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a 1 in 5 chance, a 20% chance over the next 5 years, the U.S. dollar has a major crisis. Meaning, if you have 100,000 in a 401k and the dollar has a major crisis, it'll have the same purchasing power as 50,000 when the crisis is over.
With no
20,000.
forgetting about changes in the stocks or bonds you may be investing
Exactly.
in, just based on the currency
The
fluctuation.
stocks might be 10 times higher, but prices might be up, 20 times higher.
Sure.
It's what I care about is preserving purchasing power, preserving wealth. When you earn something, you can store it safely so that when you need to use it and spend it, it still has some value at that point in time. This is the thing that we're really risking at this point, is that value is just going to violently, go up and down. And the Fed is way behind the curve in this. They've been out all week saying there is no inflation, but there is. There's lots of inflation. If anybody who shops or fills up their gas tank knows all about inflation, there's plenty of it right now.
So again, and I want to move on, but the owning land and working the land for many people that's not going to happen. That's just not the life they live. Gold, okay, put some money into gold, but you're still very, very heavily exposed to all of these risks that you're mentioning, right? I mean, maybe what you're getting at is there's really just no way to completely not, to more significantly shield yourself from the risks that you predict, or rather the possible downfalls that you're predicting. Is there just no way?
Well, if I could hold the dollar steady, right?
Yeah.
Like a currency should be this steady unit, right? And it's the corner foundational stone. And then we can build things on top of that. Holding the dollar steady, I have all kinds of advice we might give around stocks, around bonds, things like that. They're not all created equal. Some are actually going to do fine. Many of them won't. But we can't hold we have a rubber measuring stick now. That's our dollar. It's not this, wonderful bedrock thing that we can depend on anymore. And that's the lesson. And it's not just the United States. It used to be you could run to another border, right? Weimar Germany, 29 to 33. Oh my gosh, right? Well, guess what? You could have used pounds. You could have gone cross-border and gotten Swiss francs or whatever. Where do you go today if you're concerned about the dollar? To the euro? It's kind of managed the same. To the yen? Oh no, even worse. Where would we go? And so that's the condition we're in right now, is the whole world is loaded with debt, and all the currencies that are backed by that debt are all equally suspect at this point. It's a really devilishly tricky time to be investing or thinking about preserving wealth.
Is it the time to just keep the money in a shoebox?
That's
You're
not a
still
bad idea.
exposed to the currency risk.
You are, but here's the thing. You can spend money into an inflating environment really easily. But figuring out how to get your money out of a market and then spend it during a deflating environment or some other really turbulent environment, very hard to do. So cash is a legitimate position. The best investment in Japan from 1983 to about 2000 was cash.
In the last couple minutes we have, I want to talk about Japan. And since your background is in science, and I was just reading today that now the Fukushima situation has been upgraded to a 7 out of 10, which I guess is the same as Chernobyl.
7 out of 7.
Oh, it's 7 out of 7.
Yeah,
oh,
it's top of the scale.
So it's much worse than even I thought. When you look at that situation, the first thing my mind goes to, just because of how I think, is what corporate interests and regulation led to this even being to the situation being as it is, and now what influences are affecting the information we get out of it and how it will be resolved, cleaned up, or whatever term it is to be used. What do you think needs to happen in Japan? And we're already seeing contaminated milk in Vermont, just an hour north of where we are. What do you think needs to happen?
Well, how this accident actually happened was really part natural disaster, but it was really human error. So if we look at where the Fukushima Daiichi plant was located, it's right on the coast. So guess what? They put some bulwarks against that.
Yeah.
But this is the funny part, or not, the tragic part. There's a hill, and then they flattened out an area and put it here. If they'd put their generators up the hill, no problem. They would have completely avoided the tsunami, and they would have had cooling power, and all of this would have been avoided. That happened because it was probably a few dollars more, a few yen more expensive to put those up the hill rather than down in the flat spot.
Do you know that for sure? I mean,
absolutely,
that's the reason why that decision was made?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
With Deepwater Horizon, with the oil spill disaster, we heard that there was about a $500,000 option that was opted against.
Right, the blowout preventer, if they'd gone for the more expensive one.
Exactly, which likely would have prevented that disaster. And we're actually finding, even including through WikiLeaks, other examples where a similar $500,000 upgrade could have also prevented other oil leaks. So this is one of those places where even now Republicans are still pushing for less regulation on nuclear power plants. This is one where I really feel powerless, because why would anybody who's making the decisions change the status quo? They can save money. They've got their friends, Dick Cheney and Halliburton and Transocean. Everybody's all happy. Why on earth would anybody change, even if the will of the people suggests they should have that $500,000 extra spending, or the generator should have been up the hill instead of down the hill? What can be done?
Well, we're going to need energy in the worst sort of a way, because all the signs are that we're at peak oil at this point in time. Saudi Arabia keeps saying, we've got plenty, but they haven't been producing it for whatever reason. Very strange. So I'm convinced that we have a very imminent energy crisis. The issue here is, if we don't get our priorities straight in this country very rapidly, we're going to be facing that future of disaster, not by design. So we are right here, not that far from an exact identical GE Mark I reactor design, which is up in Yankee, right? Vermont Yankee, exact same design.
For our audience that's not nearby, there's a nuclear power plant about, is it maybe 45 miles north of where we are?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the exact same design, vintage 1970s, early 70s construct, and it's just a bad design. We now know that, and it's a bad design because the containment vessels are too small. It's a bad design because if you don't have power, the water sinks, and the next thing you know, it starts melting down, and all of that. It's just a horrible design. So what we should be doing, if we had our priorities straight, is decommissioning those. The question is, what do we replace it with? Because we really need electricity. It's like a non-negotiable part of our current way of life.
Yeah.
So what do we do? Do we build a coal plant? Do we, is it going to be new generation nuclear? And some of those designs, by the way, are almost foolproof at this point in time. Like, you can shut everything down, walk away, and they'll just sit there and do nothing for, ever at this point. So there are things we can do, but in my world, we would be very, very rapidly decommissioning those poorly designed plants. And here's the thing we're still not talking about enough here. Every one of the plants in the United States, whether well-built or of this poor design, have spent fuel pools that are sitting outside of a containment structure in some other thing. It's a pool of water, and so they're everywhere. We've been, dithering around about the Yucca Mountain plant, storage repository.
Right.
We got to do something with all this spent fuel. So I'm thinking that what's going to happen at this point is there will be some people saying, listen, we've got to stop this. Maybe we'll even shut some plants down because they're unsafe. Maybe we'll prevent them from creating more nuclear waste until we figure out what to do with the other stuff. All of this has to be done at the same time that energy is becoming much more expensive. And we're still not anywhere, I think, at a serious level in this country. Our last energy policy was cash for clunkers. It's so pathetic in terms of the enormity of the challenge we're facing right now.
And if this happens, if some of these nuclear plants are taken offline, then there will be a hole that needs to be filled in terms of energy. And at this point, based on current technology, what you're saying is to fill that gap will make energy significantly more expensive.
Yes, we'll have to do something. And by the way, coal is a really nasty way to get electricity. It kills a lot of people, ways we don't know about, through air pollution, mercury poisoning. I have a 12-year-old son and 11-year-old daughter. We like to fish, and we do, but we haven't eaten any fish from this region because it's too toxic right now, and it will be for a very long time. That's a really high external cost to getting our electricity cheaply. The thing is that the biggest thing we could do for electricity is to figure out how to save it. But that's just not a sexy topic. We don't give out research grants for conservation or anything like that. But that is the easiest, fastest, best way to figure out how to make more out of less.
Well, there's a lot of discussion about where should we be getting our power, but you're right. For every 10 or maybe even 50 of those discussions, there's a mention of using less energy. And I think we need to be talking about both. Certainly right now, the discussion is very skewed towards just where will we get it? Are we at peak oil? Are we not? What do you think is going to happen with alternative energy in the U.S. as a real source of energy? I mean, there's the debate when you just want to put up a couple of wind farms off the coast of Cape Cod. It's years of discussion and very difficult to move forward on something that will generate a relatively small amount of energy. Mm-hmm. Where do you think the real potential lies?
Well, the NIMBYism aside on the whole alternative energy thing, if we're waiting for market forces to come and deliver alternative energy to us, it'll be too little too late.
Oh, no question.
The scale, the cost, the time involved to transition from one energy to another. Let's even take one that's easy to conceive of. It's not even alternative. Natural gas. Apparently we have all this natural gas because we do the shale bed fracking and we pull all this stuff out, tons of it, right? Okay, so let's say we want to use that instead of oil. Well, we use oil for transportation. 95% of all things that move because we put either diesel fuel or gasoline into the tank. Okay, how many cars or trucks right now or trains or airplanes can run on compressed natural gas? For all practical purposes, it's zero. And what would it take then to either convert or build new vehicles that could do that? Oh, probably 10 years to get a meaningful sort of a number in there. Well, how would we fuel them? Oh, well, we'd have to get compressed natural gas to filling stations. Oh, well, we'll need pipelines then and all new fittings. If you wait for market forces to deliver that, you'll be waiting until long after we've already run into a liquid fuels emergency that has reshaped our lives, and we'll discover, oh, we don't have the resources to prosecute and do that enormous thing that we said. That's clever. It'd be awesome, but we can't do it because it's too expensive.
Should the government be now subsidizing some of that development instead of just waiting around?
They should be giving us the priorities and doing it. Absolutely. And here's the thing. Alternative energies, for the most part, have a very difficult time competing because they're competing against heavily subsidized industries. Oil is subsidized, nuclear is subsidized, coal is subsidized, huge amounts, both overtly and sort of covertly. There's hidden subsidies and then there's obvious ones. Alternative energy needs to be put on just a level playing field for starters. And some of it, again, is, I'll use the term again, it's not sexy. Here's the best thing we could do. And we're in New England, so a lot of oil is used for heating homes here. One of the few regions in the country where that's true. One of the things we could do right away is put solar hot water panels on all the roofs where it makes sense to do that. It's 70s technology. It's just a box. It's got some tubes in it, a pump. There's not much exciting about it. But we did that on our own house and cut our oil use in half. And every house in my block should have that. Every house in the state should have that.
And what was the payoff on that? In other words, for the cost of setting that up, how long will it take?
So this had a few tax credits, federal and state, which was nice. Taking those into account, at current oil prices, it'll have about a 7-year payback right now. And the system lasts for 25 or 30 years. So 7-year payback implies I'm getting a 14 or 15% return on my money. Where am I going to get 14 or 15% in this market?
Not in the bond market, that's for sure.
No, not there. So on just purely economic terms, it makes sense. But on an energy policy standpoint, it's absolutely, I can't understand why we're not doing this. It makes sense. It makes economic sense. It makes political sense. It will get us off foreign oil. It does everything we say we want to do, but there's almost no support for that.
Yeah, and I think obviously who's funding politicians, who's funding elections, who's reaping the benefits. Nobody who has a horse in that race has any interest in changing why we aren't getting those benefits, or at least as we should be. Chris Martenson, the website's chrismartenson.com, Martenson. And the new book, The Crash Course, is also out now, Amazon and really all over. Thanks so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Great.